Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into another chapter?
Always. Where are we headed this time?
Well, today we're tackling Chapter 4 of Underground to Canada. It's where things get, well, pretty intense for Julie. You know, that slave wagon journey.
Oh, right, yeah. This is where Smucker really doesn't shy away from showing us the harsh realities they face.
Exactly. But even amidst all that suffering, you see these flickers of hope, kindness, and strength that just make you keep turning the page. And that's what we're going to unpack today.
Sounds good to me. I'm ready when you are.
All right, so picture this. You're crammed into a rickety wagon with a bunch of other kids. The sun is beating down on you and the nights are freezing. You're hungry, thirsty, and terrified. That's what Julie's dealing with.
It's really hard to even imagine, isn't it? Smucker's descriptions are so vivid, though, that you almost feel like you're right there with them.
It's almost like the wagon itself becomes a character, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It's a powerful symbol. On the one hand, it represents their confinement, their lack of freedom. But on the other hand, it's also the only space they have. It's their temporary home where they share their fears and hopes.
And those small acts of kindness that make such a difference. Speaking of kindness, I was so struck by how much compassion Julie shows in this chapter. Even though she's going through so much herself, she's always looking out for the younger children, sharing her water, tending to their injuries, singing songs to comfort them.
It's amazing, isn't it? She's just a child herself, but acts like a mother figure to them. I think Smucker's really showing us that even in the most dehumanizing situations, the human spirit can still find a way to care for others.
Makes you wonder where she finds that strength. I mean, she must be terrified.
She is, and we see that inner struggle playing out. She misses her Mammy Sally desperately, and that yearning for home is so strong.
Right. But then she thinks about those children depending on her, and that sense of responsibility keeps her going.
And don't forget about that hope for a better future. Remember that kind, free black boy she met who told her about Canada? A land without slavery? That image keeps her going, too.
Hope is a powerful thing, that's for sure. And speaking of powerful, we can't forget about Lester. He bursts onto the scene in this chapter, and right away you get this sense of defiance from him, this absolute refusal to be broken by the slave owners.
He's definitely a force to be reckoned with. I think he represents that simmering rebellion that was always present among enslaved people.
And the way he influences Julie Dally. You could feel this tension building between them. They're both so strong-willed, but in such different ways.
It's a really interesting dynamic. You know, their connection speaks to the resilience of the human spirit, but also how trauma and shared experiences can bond people. I wonder how their relationship will unfold as the story goes on.
Me too. But, okay, there's this one scene in the cypress swamp that really stayed with me. The way Smucker describes it, the stillness of the water, the towering cypress trees, the sunlight filtering through, it's almost peaceful.
It's a nice contrast to the rest of their journey, isn't it? But even there, that danger is still present. The sucking mud, the overseer's whip, it's always lurking.
And that's where we see Julie's bravery come out. Remember when those men start struggling in the mud? She just jumps in to help, even though Lester warns her it's too dangerous.
Such a powerful moment. She doesn't hesitate, and then we see that shift in Lester. You know, at first he scolds her, but then there's this almost proud look in his eyes.
It's like that act of courage, that shared experience, starts to create a real bond between them.
Totally agree. Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, we've got to talk about the music in this chapter. Julie's songs, they're like a lifeline for her and the other children.
It's fascinating how Smucker uses music to convey so much, isn't it? Those spirituals, those mournful melodies, they connect Julie back to her Mammy Sally, to her home.
And then there's that shift to Jenny Crack Corn. It's upbeat, almost defiant.
It feels like this subtle act of rebellion, a way for them to express their desire for freedom, even if it's just through song.
Exactly. It's that flicker of hope, that yearning for a better future that keeps them going.
And speaking of hope, I think we've got a lot more to unpack here, so stay with us, because in part 2, we're going to dig deeper into those study questions and help you make sense of all this. Okay, so we've laid the groundwork. Now let's get into some of those study questions that might have you scratching your head. Like, how about those conditions on the wagon? Smucker really paints a bleak picture.
Yeah, and it's intentional. You know, she wants us to feel the weight of what Julie and those other kids are going through.
I mean, forget comfort. It's barely even survival, right? Scorching sun one minute, freezing cold the next, not enough food or water.
And don't forget about the ever-present fear. Those meager rations, those cold hoe cakes. It's all about control, keeping them weak.
A really stark reminder of how dehumanizing slavery was. Those slave owners, they saw these people as property, not human beings.
And it's not just the lack of food, right? That whip. It's a constant threat, always hanging over their heads, a way to enforce obedience through fear. We see that throughout the chapter.
Absolutely. But then, in the middle of all that cruelty, you have these moments of kindness. Like Jewel Billy, she's incredible, isn't she? Sharing her water, tending to wounds, comforting those kids.
I know, right? And think about it, she's so young herself, going through so much. Yet she still acts with so much compassion. Those small acts, they really make a difference.
It's like her form of resistance, almost. She can't physically fight back, but she can choose to be kind, to nurture.
Exactly. It shows that her spirit can't be broken. Now, one question I always hear is, why doesn't she run away? She clearly wants to be free.
It's a good question. You can feel her inner struggle, right? Part of her wants to escape, get away from all that misery.
That desire to be free, it's so understandable. But then she's got this sense of responsibility for those other kids, like she's their protector.
Plus, that memory of her Mammy Sally. It keeps her connected, gives her strength.
And don't forget, she has that hope for a better future. That story about Canada, a land without slavery, it fuels her, gives her something to strive for.
So powerful. Okay, we got to talk about Lester. What a character, right? So different from Julie and Dill, yet they seem drawn to each other.
I know, their relationship is so complex. At first, you see Lester's anger, his defiance. He seems dangerous.
He's definitely got a tough exterior, but underneath that, you sense a vulnerability. He's been through so much.
Oh, absolutely. And as the chapter goes on, you see how they start to respect each other, like acknowledge each other's strengths.
That swamp scene, for example. She risks everything to help those men in the mud. And Lester, after trying to stop her, he ends up watching her with pride.
It's such a pivotal moment. Shows that their bond is growing. They're not just fellow sufferers anymore. They're becoming allies.
Yeah, it's like they see the strength in each other. Julie Gannell's compassion, Lester's courage. Okay, shifting gears a bit. Let's talk about symbolism. That wagon, for instance, it's more than just a wagon, right?
Yeah, right. It's this incredibly powerful symbol of their world. It represents their confinement, their lack of freedom.
But it's also the only space they have. It's where they find connection, share stories, sing songs. It's their temporary home.
It shows that even in captivity, humans still crave meaning, connection. And then there's the swamp. Smucker described it so beautifully, but underneath that beauty, there's real danger.
Right, those towering trees, the still water. But then, the sucking mud, the overseer's whip. It's both beautiful and terrifying.
It's like a metaphor for their whole journey, isn't it? There will be moments of beauty, but also danger and struggle.
It reminds us that freedom isn't easy. There will be obstacles along the way. Okay, another question I often get is about the songs. Why are they so prominent in this chapter? What do they represent?
The songs are so important. They're more than just entertainment. They're like a lifeline for Julie and the others. Think about those spirituals. Those mournful melodies connect her back to her Mammy Sally, to her faith.
And they offer comfort, right? A sense of belonging in a world that's trying to strip that away from them. And then there's Jenny Cracked Corn. It's got such a different feel. Upbeat, defiant.
It's their way of subtly rebelling, expressing that desire for freedom even under the watchful eye of their captors.
It's so powerful. So, okay, thinking about those essay questions you might be tackling, often there's one about Julie and Lester's relationship. How do you think their connection evolves in this chapter?
Well, we see how different they are at first. Lester's so outwardly angry, while Julie's strength is quieter, more resilient.
But as the chapter progresses, they start to respect each other. That scene in the swamp, I think, is really key.
Yeah. That shared act of courage really solidifies their bond. They start to see each other as allies.
And by the end, it's clear they're not quite friends yet, but there's a growing understanding between them. Okay, how about the swamp scene itself? Why do you think Smucker chose to set such a pivotal moment there in this challenging environment?
The swamp is so symbolic, right? It represents the complexity of their journey, the beauty and the danger, the highs and lows.
It shows that freedom isn't a straight path. There will be obstacles, setbacks, and it's in that environment that we see Julie's true courage.
Right. Risking her safety for those men. And then you see Lester's admiration for her. It really reveals a lot about both characters.
And finally, that big question. How do Julie, Nellie, and the others hold on to hope in such a horrible situation?
Well, even though they face such awful things, there are these glimmers of hope that keep them going. Those small acts of kindness, the stories they share, the songs.
And of course, that image of Canada,
Yeah.
that land of freedom. It's a powerful symbol of what they're fighting for.
It's a reminder that hope, even in the darkest times, can be a powerful force.
So we've unpacked a lot here about symbolism, character development, those big themes.
So as we wrap up chapter 4, it's good to step back, and think about those big takeaways, those lasting impressions. What do you think? What are we left with?
Well, I think for me, what really sticks is just how resilient the human spirit is.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. These kids are facing unimaginable horrors. But still, they find a way to hold on to hope, to care for each other.
Yeah. I mean, look at Julie Philly. She's just been thrust into this horrific situation, and yet she still shows so much compassion, so much strength.
She really becomes this pillar of strength for those other kids, almost like a mother figure.
Yeah. And in this chapter, we really see her grow, She starts out scared, uncertain, but then she really steps up, shows courage, makes tough decisions.
And that relationship with Lester plays a big part in that, don't you think? I mean, they start out so wary of each other, their personalities clash. But then, through those shared struggles, those moments of understanding in the swamp, they start to connect.
That connection really gets to me. It shows that even in the darkest places, we can find those human connections, and they find strength in each other's differences, Julie Philly with her compassion and Lester with his defiance.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. And it reminds us that sometimes those unexpected connections can have the biggest impact on us. So another big takeaway for me is hope. I mean, it's a constant theme in this chapter. They're facing so much, but they never completely lose sight of that hope for a better future.
It pops up everywhere, doesn't it? In their songs, in the stories they tell each other, in that memory of the free black boy who told Julie about Canada. That image is so powerful for her.
It's like even when things seem hopeless, they never completely give up. And that's what keeps them going, gives them strength. And, Smucker really uses symbolism to drive home those themes of resilience and hope, like the wagon, for instance.
Oh, right. It's so much more than just a wagon. It represents their confinement, of course, but it's also their space, their temporary home.
Yeah, it's where they connect, share their dreams. And then there's the swamp. That's such a powerful metaphor.
The swamp, yeah.
Oh.
It's both beautiful and dangerous, just like their journey. And it shows that freedom isn't this straight, easy path. There are going to be obstacles, risks.
And yet, they keep moving forward no matter how hard it gets. That swamp scene, that's really a pivotal moment for them.
Definitely. It's where we see Julie's true bravery and Lester's respect for her. It really sets the stage for what's to come.
And last but not least, the songs. We can't forget about those. They're not just entertainment, they're vital for these kids.
Oh, yeah. Think about those spirituals. They connect Julie to her heritage, her faith, her family. They give her a sense of belonging when everything else is being taken from her.
And then Jenny cracked corn. It's almost like a little act of rebellion, a way to express their desire for freedom, even under the watchful eyes of their captors.
It's powerful stuff. The songs show that music can be a form of resistance, a way to connect, a source of hope.
So I guess what we're saying is, as you keep reading, pay attention to all those layers, the characters, the symbols, those big themes.
Yeah, because this is just the beginning of Julie's journey. There's so much more to come. So much more to learn about her strength, her resilience, her amazing hope for a better future.
Absolutely. And on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Chapter 4. We hope it's helped you make sense of this powerful chapter.